Hey MGTOWs, this is Vention. As you can see, I'm back from Montana. Had an interesting time working on the dump truck. It took me 2 weeks to bring that truck back to usefulness, and it was quite a challenge actually. That old series parallel switch in the battery box kind of threw me, and I had to go into major research mode to figure out how to wire the thing in. And then I had a whole laundry list of things that had to be done in order for the truck to run. And now there is a whole laundry list of additional things that need to be done that that I had to stop on, because I got to take care of myself. I've got scans, and I got to do my cancer IVs. I got to do a bunch of things, And again, I need to get the numbers for the CEA and get that PET scan, and then I can determine what to do next. Had a fairly good time over there. It was very beautiful and peaceful, and I would be working on the truck, and I would then stop and listen to the birds and the wind in the trees, and I slept like a rock all the time I was there. What you might be wondering, what has excited me about this project that has caused me to pretty much take 2 weeks out of my life to go and to work on it, because I didn't really know those people very well, and I'm not a permaculture designer. I'm familiar enough with permaculture to see the benefits of it, but not. I am no way am I an expert. But the thing is, what really excited me was this earth sheltered greenhouse. It's a very impressive piece of technology, and I would love to see them build it, and I would love to see it work, because basically that could really help us. They are all about living a better life and working out to the technology so that people can live a better life, and that's why they call the big big plot of land that they work on, they call it the lab, and then the main house and a lot of the people live in a place called base camp, which is about a mile or two away from the lab. And basically, the technology is really promising, and it's there, I think, to solve a problem. And one of the problems is just the level of exploitation that the regular guys are subjected to in life, right? If you want to buy something, right, you have to go and earn the money, right? And you earn the money and with your labor, but the thing is, big chunks of that labor are just seized by government and taken to do whatever they want with it, right? And then on top of that, they print money too, which basically gives us about a 4 or 5% pay cut every year under normal circumstances. But with the amount of money printing they're doing now, man, I can only imagine what the prices are going to look like in 2 years, right? Because it's all going to come out on prices. But when the inflation rate, it effectively gives us a 4 or 5% pay cut every year, and then that forces us to either pressure our boss to give us a raise, or to fall into a lower standard of living, right? Now, if we fall into a lower standard of living, our taxes are more or less unchanged, but we just don't have as much economic power to maintain ourselves with. But if we do manage to get a raise, then half the time that raise is canceled out by going into the next higher tax bracket, and you end up losing, gaining nothing anyway. But there are ways around that by going ultra frugal, or very frugal in your life, right? Paying off your debts, getting everything knocked out, and then avoiding marriage and divorce, and getting obliterated with legal bills and divorce fees, and massive family court fees, and then all the wealth that the family court then gives to the woman after they take their cut, right? And all of these traps are set up for normal people to just fall into, right? But people who have their eyes open a little farther can kind of see out ahead a little bit and see those traps and kind of step around them. And while the people who watch Dancing with the Stars, they just fall right in. And then when they're in the trap, sometimes it kills them with, like, for example, cancer is one of the traps, and so is chemotherapy. That's also one of the traps. But basically they, then if you're still alive, they haul you out, take everything you own, and you file for bankruptcy, and then they throw you back into the game, right? Or you die, you know. And in my opinion, you know, from what I've observed and seen in the world, it looks like we come back multiple times. And that can either be a good thing or, oh man, either a good thing or a bad thing. It can be both, right? Because the world is just full of bad and good. But anyway, if you can avoid a lot of the traps that they fall into, then you will pass normal people just like they're standing still financially and in an overall sense of well-being, right? One of the things that really inspires me about what they're doing up there on the lab is they have these earth-sheltered houses, and they have rocket mass heaters, which can heat a house on like 1/10 of the normal wood if you heat with wood. And it burns so hot that it actually breaks down the carbon and the carbon monoxide, the soot and everything, and it turns it into carbon monoxide and water vapor. And then it pulls the heat out of the smoke and pushes the smoke out, right? And you can actually put your face in front of the exhaust vent and take an inhale, and it smells like somebody's burning a wood stove, like maybe halfway down the block, right? And you're just smelling it on the wind. That's how clean those things burn. And they're more efficient, vastly more efficient, and they're way less polluting than a normal wood stove. And then you have the earth-sheltered housing, which is vastly more energy efficient. In the hot Montana sunshine, and when it's like 95 degrees, you can walk into one of those places and it's like 71, you know. And in the cold, freezing, driving blizzard where penguins would be comfortable, they're like 68, you know. The potential of this technology is amazing. And then when you combine it with rocket mass heaters, man, you've got a recipe for real, inexpensive, very clean, and very non-toxic living. Like normal houses and RVs especially, the newer they are, the more goo they outgas from like particle board epoxies and you know, just like tons of man-made chemicals like in the plastics that are constantly outgassing these vapors, and that's coming into your bloodstream through your lungs. And man, fighting cancer and that's a recipe for failure there. I was playing with the idea of buying a new camper, but man, the outgassing of those new things, you know, that new car smell and everything, can't do it. It's just too friggin' dangerous. It's too damaging to my health, and my health is already fragile because of the cancer. But anyway, back to the dollars, right? Every time a dollar changes hands, you got Social Security, you got federal income tax, and you've got all these other deductions. And then on top of that, your employer has to pay the other half of the Social Security tax. And it's just a Ponzi scheme. You know, the first person who, when they first instituted it, the first person who did it paid in for like a month and then got the rest of her friggin' life as retired. Talk about a Ponzi scheme. And then they want us to pay into that. And I did. Maybe there'll be something left for me in 10 years when I'm 65. Maybe. Who knows? But whatever it is, the dollars that they print are going to rob minimum of 5 or 6% a year until I retire. 5% minus 5% minus 5% over 10 years, I will have very little spending power in that Social Security check. By the way, over in Montana, I was listening to the wind in the trees, and I did not hear one siren, except for in the very distance, I would hear a train sometimes tooting its horn. But anyway, if you want to buy something, you have to pay the feds all of their various taxes, and your state might even be dogpiling in and charging you state income tax too. And then on top of that, they turn around and charge you state sales tax. And basically it's just tax, tax, tax until you end up paying like 45% of your income for taxes. And what do they give you? Not much. They just, they're standing by while the cities burn, and they basically are just blowing up weddings in foreign countries that I don't have any concern about, and I am tired of paying for it. So this year I don't plan to pay it. I'm going to cash in just enough investments to fall below the minimum for long-term capital gains tax, and I will not be paying any income tax this year. And but basically, most people, and me up until now, every time you want to spend $1, you've got to pay in taxes about 45% of that dollar. And then, you have to earn, they take about 45% of it, and then you have about 55 cents left out of the dollar that you might be able to go buy some freaking kale with, right? But what if you can grow that kale by yourself, right? That is what really appeals to me about this earth-sheltered greenhouse that they're working on, and they're trying to get a Kickstarter funding thing set up for. The Paul Wheaton Permies website, has a bunch of people following it, and a lot of people like me want to see that earth-sheltered greenhouse work, and see what the results will be. And so they contribute 5, 10, 20 bucks, whatever. And then that's how they buy the diesel fuel and buy all the beans and rice that they eat, and carrots and whatnot. They have they do a no meat diet for the most part over there. And it is so healthy. I was pretty amazed because I had a couple of meals over there. Man, I'm thinking about going back. I could live so cheap there, it would be unbelievable. And then I could do all kinds of fun things like working on the equipment, and I could get into the permaculture side. Oh man, that's a lot of exciting stuff going on over there. But let me cover the earth-sheltered greenhouse. The thing is, it is basically they have these logs over the top, right? And then they put sign tarps that they acquire from like either dumps or directly from the road sign manufacturer. And they are old advertising road signs that are really thick, heavy plastic that are very good for this sort of thing. And they use that to cover the logs, and then they put dirt on top of it for insulation. And if it's a house that they built, they use 2 sign tarps and a layer of dirt, which acts as a thermal mass that really smooths out the temperature swings in that from the Montana driving blizzards to the 100-degree weather that they often have in the afternoon in the summer. Well, anyway, if I'm over there, if I decide to go over there, there might be a time when it's like hot in the afternoon, like 100 degrees. That's when you dive into one of those earth-sheltered houses and do some kind of online work or whatever, or do some kind of work that you can do indoors. But so you can escape the extreme temperatures. But back to the earth-sheltered greenhouse. When the sun is vertical in the real hot weather, most of that is blocked by the dirt, right? But in the winter time, the angle of the sun drops, and then you get full exposure into the greenhouse. Then when you get the cold blizzard, driving blizzards of Montana on this single pane glass that they have here, it really gets cold in here, and all that frost drops into this lower trench below the plank floor here and down here. And down here they have a piece of technology that is used by cattle ranchers in Montana and other cold areas. They take advantage of the natural heat, the fact that the earth stays at about 50 degrees pretty much all the time. So what they do is, when the cattle ranchers, they throw these well shafts or these well pipes in that are about 8 inches wide, that they usually use for digging deep wells, right? And they only dig at 20 feet though, and jam the pipe down in there. And then they take advantage of the earth's natural heat, and then they put a water trough on top. And then when it's really cold and freezing up here, the water is heated by the circulating between the 50 degree and the freezing weather up here, and it keeps the water above freezing, so it keeps the ice off of the water, so the cattle can still drink their water, right? There were a lot of roads they were planning on doing roads this way back in like the 70s with Popular Science. They were going to do something similar to that to keep all the roads free of snow. I'm not sure what happened to that. It probably never worked out, but maybe they tried it. I don't know. But it is used in Montana for cattle ranchers. But in any case, when that cold weather or that cold frost, instead of ending up trapped in here and freezing all your plants, which are either probably on this ledge, it drops into the pit here, and then that 50 degree constant temperature, what brings it up to about 50. And then in the summer they have a pipe. I mean, when the sun comes up, they have another pipe, which I haven't drawn in here, that is set to basically in the bottom of here, and then it goes up here, and they're going to paint it black or something to absorb sunlight, and then that will act to draw that cold 50 degree heat up and turn it into like 60 or 70, 80 degree heat that will be in the greenhouse. And they, with this system, could quite probably grow their greens all the way through the year, even in the summer when greens tend to bolt like the moment they're planted because it's so hot, and then they go to seed, and then they basically get really bitter, you know. But in a earth-sheltered greenhouse like that, those greens wouldn't have absolute direct sunlight, but they'd have a lot of reflected sunlight that is indirect, and that would be enough for a lot of those plants to become harvestable longer. And when you produce your own food like that, or some of your own food like that, every time you grow a tomato or a head of lettuce or something, and then benefit by eating it, right? Then you gain the nutrition, and you don't have to pay the feds 40% or 45% of your, you don't have to pay government 45% of the lettuce, right? You just get the whole thing, right? And that claws that power back from the upper end, you know, the bankers and the Monsanto and the big, genetically modified agriculture monocrop systems. It claws all that power back to us where it belongs. So that is extremely exciting to me. And plus, now that when I'm dealing with this whole cancer situation, I have to really move my diet over as close to organic as possible, and possibly better than organic if possible. And that would be better than organic. Organic is largely monocropped, and they use alternative pesticides and things like that, but they still have all the problems with monocropping, and then they have to add a lot of inputs to the soil to keep it from depleting. So it's this whole big thing. And the regular monocrop agriculture, man, they dump natural gas derived fertilizers on it, and then dump tons of pesticides that are made from petroleum, and then the soil is depleted, and the nutrition of the produce is questionable at best, and then you have to pay 45% of your income in order to buy it, right? So that solves several problems at once, and that's why I'm so excited by that greenhouse project, and that is why I got off my ass, drove to Montana, and spent 2 weeks fixing that dump truck. That's how excited I am with this technology. So, you know how I always say peace, freedom, and prosperity. That's the MGTOW way. But there is a lot of peace, freedom, and prosperity that can be added to someone's life with that. And then once they build it and make it work, then the plans will be public, and then people all over the country can be building these things. And we are moving into a time right now where things are going to get tight. People are going to be hungry because the infrastructure is being burned down by, well, to me it looks like there's two groups of elites, right? You got the super elite people who are like running the banks and the Federal Reserve and the government and all the big corporations. Then you've got another group of elites who want to flip the table over and take over and build a new system, or create a new system, communist of course, where they themselves are in charge, and they get to print the money, they get to make the rules, and basically shoot anybody who gets in their way, with some kind of trumped up charge like you're racist or something like that, right? So they're pushing all this racist BS, and it's pretty nasty, and it's causing the whole country to fracture. There's like preppers, like that Pastor Dow guy. The moment some race car driver, like the only black race car driver, created, basically somehow a noose appeared in his office or something, and then supposedly one of his coworkers supposedly found it, and no video or anything, just his word, just like Jussie Smollett. Man, that looks like a false flag. And actual preppers, the Second Amendment guys like him, are believing it in a second and throwing all the whites under the bus in the entire country, instantaneously believing without any shred of evidence, throwing all of us under the bus. And man, that really sows an atmosphere of distrust, because man, I would never ever join a community like that, because the moment any news story on freaking MSNBC shows up where supposedly some white guy did something bad to some black guy, immediately they would turn on me and throw me under the bus too. I cannot invest anything in a community like that. So the result is the gulf widens even among preppers, and it's very sad and it's deliberate. So anyway, it looks to me like two groups of elites who each control some section of the country. The big group of elites who have been running the country for the last 100 years, the banksters and the Federal Reserve and all the big, huge corporate people who own and control all the politicians, right? Then you've got the Marxists who want to take over, wreck the whole system, and then preside and rule over the wreckage. And because a socialist communist system, they drop down to basic survival, like North Korea and Venezuela, barely surviving, and then people are starving, and everybody's disarmed, and everybody's just subject to the king, who is basically the Soros family is really trying for that. And it looks like those two groups of elites are battling each other. The commies, basically, the Soros people, they own the media for the most part, and the commies who own all those Confucius institutes in all the higher education institutions, the Chinese Communist Party funds all of those people, and then bribes all the professors and gives them bonuses for giving technology to them. There's one guy who's being prosecuted for that now, and those Marxist communist professors then get other communist professors in, and now the whole higher education institution, it's ready to just be trashed because it's just garbage. All it is indoctrination, massively feminist, massively communist, hugely racist against the majority of the population in the United States. And of course they hate men, and they hate anything that is masculine, and they're always attacking Father's Day, as we all well know. So basically, and then of course you have the people who are owned and controlled by the banksters, who are more of the traditionalists, right? And they have been funded by the Federal Reserve and everything. They've been running the whole country for 100 years. And all of these people, both sides, want to just exploit you because you are just a worker drone to them to be harvested, and a useful tool to be discarded. You know, like when the communists took over Germany, you know, they started attacking the Hebrew descendants, you know, as well as a lot of the people who didn't fit in, like people who had birth defects and stuff, you know. So you know, basically the communists took over Germany, and the same thing, they're trying to do the same thing here. They've already got North Korea, communist China, and Venezuela, and Cuba, a few other places. But those systems don't work. It takes real ignorance and utter indoctrination to believe it. But there's a group of elites who are trying to topple the society and take it over and destroy it so that they can rule over the wreckage. But both of those systems, both of those groups of elites, they need worker drones like us, and they need us to be in their system. They want us to bust our ass all our lives and then die of cancer before we get retired. Then they can take all the money, right? They don't want us to be able to think critically, and they don't want us to be able to satisfy any of our own needs. And anyway, and then when we do retire, they want us to stay right in the high price zone and pay every single thing that we need, pay them into their system until we're obliterated financially eventually and then die, right? But they do not want technology like this. Neither side wants technology that allows us to maintain and take care of our own needs. So the result is that is exactly what I want. And that's why I'm so excited about it, and that's why I got off my ass and went to Montana and fixed that dump truck. It has tremendous potential, gentlemen, and I'm probably going to join the Kickstarter too. I'll probably, I don't know if it's public yet or not, but I'll see if I can post a link in the more video info in case you want to read more about this, because I'm just a diesel mechanic giving the overview of this thing, and I don't even have the skills to really help them construct the thing. But fixing their dump truck, that's something I can do and I could do, and that is something I did do. And now they have basically a ginormous wheelbarrow, and even if I've only trained 2 guys partially how to drive it, they could just fill the thing up, put it in like low, and just grind their way to the place, you know, where they want to dump the soil, and then dump it, right? And just slowly go back. Eventually they'll get more skilled with it, but basically they, you know, it's going to be a lot easier and more, and it'll carry a lot more than this dump trailer that they have there, which is a pretty good tool in a way as well, but it's not as maneuverable as the dump truck. So yeah, that was my contribution to the Kickstarter, but I think I might buy into the Kickstarter too. Although pretty much I could write my own ticket as far as getting the information because of what I've done, you know. But the thing is, they've got a lot of, those are strong, real strong, independent guys, and you know, feminists have co-opted that label. They say, I'm a strong feminist, an independent woman, and then they get all the government subsidies and special treatment, and then they say they're strong and independent. But these guys, those guys are really strong, because I've worked with some of them, and man, have they kicked my ass. And they are absolutely quite independent. The skills that they're building over there will allow them to go anywhere in the world and put together designs for people who, you know, permaculture designs for people who want the technology but can't spend all those years specializing in it. So yeah, and when this technology, if it's proven, I could easily see people building these in their backyard, smaller versions of it, and man, it could be a real staple in our society. And the time is coming when food is going to be scarce and expensive, and technology like that is going to be very handy, and preparedness and stuff like that are going to become more popular as well, just as it did in the 2008 recession. And I also expect Bitcoins to be pushed up by people losing confidence in the currencies all over the world, which are being printed into insanity. People are going to lose confidence in these just as they did in the 2008 recession, when they started losing confidence in the banking system and getting into precious metals. My silver went up 260%, my gold went up 70%, and some of those gains, it started dropping too, but then some of those gains I harvested for the down payment of my house, which I bought at the bottom of the market in 2012. You know, if you've got your eyes open, you can see economic cycles, how they move through our society. We're dipping into a real crash right now. And you can then determine when you want to make your major purchases in life. For example, if you're ready to buy a house right now, I would rent, and I would put my money into something that they can't print. Gold, silver, or Bitcoin is a very good opportunity. Maybe all three, you know, so you could be a little diversified. A lot of people who are real Bitcoin maximalists, and I am too, but I still have a big ammo box full of silver too. And I have no intention of selling it anytime soon. So, you know, I'm not an all eggs in one basket kind of guy, although my Bitcoin holdings have grown to the point where most of my eggs are in one basket. So in any case, I highly recommend looking into alternative technologies like that, both financial with Bitcoin, as well as ways of opting out of their system and taking a step back from their system, separating yourself from their systems that don't serve us, such as marriage, divorce, child support, alimony. That doesn't serve us. And paying all the taxes. But if you can grow a tomato and eat it yourself and benefit from it, you have a massively non-toxic product that is not full of chemicals and not might be genetically modified, but it doesn't really matter to me if something's GMO, unless they spray a frick ton of Roundup all over it that end up in the tissues of the tomato, and then you eat the tomato and you're eating Roundup, you know. And then they say, oh, it's non-toxic, just like they said aspartame is non-toxic. And I believe, it appears to me that all that Diet Mountain Dew I drank in my 20s, I suspect that's what gave me colon cancer. Because, man, it gave the rats colon cancer, something awful. And aspartame kept getting refused by the FDA until Donald Rumsfeld, back when the Republicans were the bad guys, and they basically fired the scientists that wouldn't play ball, and they managed to, every time a rat would like get a cancer or something, just operate on the tumor, pull it out, throw the rat back into the experiment. And then when they would like go blind and become morbid obese, you know, they just called those aberrations, and they rammed it through. But if you want to be grossed out, look at the aspartame experiments that were reproduced by some college chick who actually was worth a shit, probably not a feminist. And she basically reproduced those experiments and documented it. It was a horror show. And man, if you're drinking diet sodas that are made from, I mean, it's bad enough to drink regular like stevia sodas. I'm going to give those up. But drinking aspartame, that Monsanto garbage. By the way, Monsanto's gone. It's been absorbed into Bayer, which is an evil, horrible organization as well, that sold hemophiliacs medicine from HIV positive donors, and they knew it, and then it was outlawed in the US, and then they sold it in Europe to finish the stocks, even though they knew they were killing people. You cannot trust corporations. You can't trust any of these big institutions like the FDA, the NSA, the FBI. You can't trust any of them. They are all captured by people who are not your friends. But if you take all of that power back and step back from their system and participate less, it gives the system less power and it gives you more power. And technologies like that are a valuable tool to make that happen. So yeah, that's why I took that trip to Montana. And man, I kind of like the lifestyle there. It's hard work, and it's a lot of outdoorsy stuff, but man, there's a lot I could do to help that community with their mechanical issues, and I could learn a heck of a lot about permaculture. And I could probably do work trades with my mechanical skills to attend the classes and the get-togethers and the big permaculture jamborees and the permaculture design courses that they run in those places, in that place. I could probably get a lot of that stuff for free, and then I wouldn't have to cash in as many Bitcoins, and then I wouldn't be funding their system as much. So yeah, every time you can satisfy your own needs without participating in the travesty of their economy, that increases your power and takes power away from them. And man, I love that. Okay, MGTOWs, that's MGTOWs. Since 2012, I've called MGTOW. I've always done that for all these years, but gradually it's been sort of pretty much accepted that the way it's pronounced is MGTOW. So if you guys want, you know, and if you care, I'll probably forget now and then, but I will probably start calling MGTOWs MGTOW. And don't get married.